Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Growth Circle AMA with Chitra Singh. She's the founder and chief mentor of Sales Womentoring, and she's mentored about 2,000 plus women so far through about 100 plus workshops. She has an esteemed experience of about 27 plus years where she has led sales teams in ICICI Bank and Kotak Bank. After being at the peak of her career, she decided she wanted to do something far more meaningful, which was to mentor the people who are starting on from scratch. So her platform, the Sales Mentoring, the community that she has built so far, that helps women like entrepreneurs, people who are building their careers, building their new setups. She helps them get the sales in, which is the key piece, right? The money. So let's get started. Myself, I am Swati Garg. I have about 19 plus years of experience in software technology. And I also did my MBA from MIT Sloan, which was a 1 year full-time program called Sloan Fellows Program. After finishing that, I'm back to India and I am currently exploring new adventures. So when you left your corporate, you were at your peak, right? And you wanted to start something of your own. What was the trigger or motivation behind Sales Mentoring? What made you start that?
Some of it we've already mentioned, right? Very few women in sales. A lot of myths and misconceptions surrounding selling, that it is not suitable for women, too much pressure, traveling, target, safety, entertaining, socializing. A lot of myths, due to which there are very, very few women in sales. So I always found that I was the only sales leader in the room. At entry level, of course, you have a lot of women, especially in banks. But at leadership level, I always found I was the only regional head, only zonal head, only country head. And which is why when I saw that there is a gap here, I felt that instead of complaining about it and instead of talking about it, it's high time someone did something about it. All the years of experience leading sales teams, I knew that I could do something about it. And that's why I decided to plunge in and take this challenge up to start a community exclusively for women, knowing that there is no such community in India. Abroad, there is National Association of Women Sales Professionals, women in sales everywhere. Most of them are either the US or UK based, but Sales Sisters is one which is there in the UK. But however, in India, there was no such community, and a lot of people did question my decision and said, why would you want to give up a well paying bank job in order to do this? But also, there was nothing exciting happening. I was doing more of the same thing in the corporate, and I knew that my life had to take a new direction to find meaning and purpose in my work. So I thought the best way would be this community. And the last reason is because I always felt very strongly about women being able to negotiate for the value they deserve at work and in life. And I found that they always held back in doing so. And for me, my journey in sales has given me the confidence to negotiate for value at home, at work, and in life. And that's why I thought I should enable more women to experience this, to be able to negotiate confidently, and to be able to own their ambition, be independent, and be financially free. For me, again, sales has been a vehicle through which I've got all the money I have. It's indeed a really well-paying profession. So, keeping in mind my interest in enabling women to negotiate and also in enabling women to reach leadership positions and plug that gap of women leaders in sales, I decided to start this 5 years back during COVID times. And of course, a lot of people said I was mad. But today, 5 years later, we are still going strong and doing those WhatsApp challenges where Sindhu also met me. And a lot of other things, of course, workshops, mentorship, coaching, corporate programs. So that's where I am now.
Interesting. So you mentioned about the gaps, basically that sales brings or challenges women to solve for. So, for example, negotiation or basically finding or deservability, right? So these are some of the things that sales and learning about sales brings to women. Was there also something where you felt this is where women actually do better than men, or like this is the reason why women need to be in the room where you were probably alone all the time, and it was mostly men
Absolutely.
centered?
Absolutely, because women bring a lot of, they are called softer skills, but I think they are the most important skills. For example, whether it is empathy, whether it is social skills, whether it is storytelling skills, whether it is being able to read the room, because emotionally we are more intuitive, more because we want to actually read the room in order to assuage all the problems. That's how we do in our families also. We kind of bring everybody down and calm everybody. So we read the room better. We are emotionally intuitive. People call us emotional, but I would say we are emotionally more intelligent. And we are good storytellers. We are good social conversationists. And the last point is women are collaborative rather than competitive. Again, it comes from the need to be liked and to belong, that we
Yeah.
want to be accepted, we want to be liked, we want to belong, and therefore we want the other person on our side, we want the other person to like us. Because of that, our need for collaboration even in professional relationships is higher than most men, in the case of men. And it's an unspoken kind of contract between them. I will compete with you, and it doesn't affect their relationships. So for them it is get the deal at any cost, and
Yeah.
they will make sure that they benefit and they get the deal at any cost. For women, it is preserve the relationship, and sometimes at any cost. And because of this, they are more customer oriented, and I feel they do better at selling. And there are proven statistics for that, because the quota achievement rates of women are 8% higher than men. On an average, men are 75, 76%. Women are closer to the range of 84%. Women led teams have higher quota achievement rates, 3% higher. And on an average, women's contract sizes, that is deal sizes, are $5,000 higher. So their closure rates are higher, their win rates are higher by 11%. And all these are published statistics by Gong and Exactly, because of which women ask more questions, and they ask to understand, not
Yeah.
merely out of curiosity, of course, but to understand. And the more they understand, the better they are able to provide a solution which benefits both parties.
Yes.
Whereas, and they talk a lot, but often it is perceived as wrong. In sales, of course, you have to listen more and speak less, but they talk to understand. And the more they understand, the better their rapport is and connection is, due to which it leads to collaborative outcomes. So women do better at selling, but I think they do worse at managing their mindset around selling. And also, it doesn't help that the world tells you that sales is a career which is not suitable for women, and whatever I mentioned, the pressures. How will you be able to manage traveling in sales, socializing, entertaining, the so-called, caro bar, which is called bar on the car, which is the even the after office socializing, which we are not able to do. Informal networks, which men take advantage of to get business. We don't spend enough time doing all that, and because of which we suffer both in our careers and in selling. But mostly, sales is again not perceived as a profession of pride or choice for women. Most parents will say very proudly, my daughter is an engineer, she's working with whatever, Deloitte or XYZ. Nobody says with pride, my daughter is a salesperson, she works with Johnson and Johnson. Most people will try and hide that, which is one of the reasons, again, I wanted to elevate sales and position it as a profession of pride and choice, and as a profession of purpose. Because the purpose of selling is not to just manipulate somebody into buying something they don't want. It is to serve and to help others to achieve their outcomes and to get the results they want. Which, if you understand, then you will not run away from selling. It is at its heart serving, which I had mentioned even during this 14-day program. It comes from a Scandinavian word called serve. To sell it means to serve. And that is the core and the essence of selling, to serve others and to help them achieve their outcomes.
Very nice. I hope that actually inspires some of the women who are starting entrepreneurs to be motivated to get to those numbers which you have shared.
There's enablement practices which are in place, and those you can do only if you are in touch with the market, you experience the customer journey yourself, and you are on the field meeting customers, at least in the initial stages. Because who better to be a brand ambassador of your product than you, and who better to communicate the unique value of your product than you? So I feel that a founder should live the brand, embody the brand, breathe the brand, and be its biggest voice and ambassador. And if they cannot be, then how do you expect others to sell it confidently with conviction and authenticity? So the first thing is that you be the seller yourself, because we are selling all the time, even in even in platforms like this or in a session like this, you are selling your personal brand. Others are making an impression about you, even in a WhatsApp group, in a networking event, in your office. All the time you're selling yourself to a prospective employer. Uh, Someone said she's in HR. Who said that?
Param. Hmm.
Param. Right. So even an HR person is selling the company's brand to a prospective employee. So ultimately, everybody is selling, whether it's sales process and collateral script messaging for your team, and you can train your team. The second thing is having enough cash flows. And the third thing is being very clear why you're in this business in the first place, your purpose or your why, because that will influence all your decisions later. And make sure that you stay on course. Often when you deviate from the course and you're tempted to take decisions which are not actually going to be beneficial for the business because they are just going to give you money, that time you go back and question, why did I start? Because people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. I've not said this, Simon Sinek has said it. Be very clear on your why, be very clear on your who is my ICP, who am I selling to, and be very clear on your unique value proposition. So if these three things you're not clear on, who you're selling to, why you're in this business, what's your purpose, and what is your unique value proposition which differentiates you from everybody else in the market, because we mentioned competition. If you're clear on your UVP, you know why should somebody buy me and what is the value I will give. If you're not clear on these three W's, who you're selling to, why you're in this business, and what is my unique value proposition, I don't think that you will have a sustainable business. So three things, I'll repeat: founder as seller, adequate cash flows, and being clear on the three W's. Why are you in this business? What is your purpose? Who is your customer? That is your ideal customer or your ICP. And the last question is, what is your UVP? Because if you cannot, people will not believe you. So these are the three elements of a UVP. Valuable from the point of view of your customer. Does it offer value? Is it relevant for your customer? Is it differentiated, which makes it stand out? And is it possible to substantiate it with awards, recognition, certifications, social proof, ratings, reviews? Can I give proof when someone asks, why should I believe you?
Yeah.
So the three questions the customer will ask is it of value to me? Is it relevant for me, which is valuable? How are you different from others? Everyone else is giving the same product, differentiated. So VDS, and substantiated. Why should I believe you? We spent 2 minutes on the unique value proposition because I think that's where most people struggle. And even for an individual, it is your personal value statement, right? Where you are now, where you want to be, and how will it be aligned with your organization's priorities and benefit them. That is what needs to be your personal value statement. If you were stuck in an elevator, at the risk of sounding very cliched, with your boss, or your boss is actually super boss, what would you say? Which would ensure that you are remembered in that 30 seconds or 60 seconds. That is your personal value statement. And ultimately, it has to be of benefit to the organization. So where you are now, what are your skills and expertise, where you want to be, and how can it add benefit or value to the organization? That's your personal value statement. So if we want to change this for an individual, that's how I would look at it. Even for a business, it appears easy. It is not so. Because often we have preconceived notions based on our own impressions of what our customer would like. And very often, as we grow, we lose touch with the market. For a new business, like for example, Sindhu is starting something. She is absolutely, it's just based on her previous interactions with women and what they would want. But these are assumptions. And a lot of biases also come into those assumptions. We've heard of cognitive bias, right? Where we interpret information based on our existing attitudes and values. So we selectively absorb and retain what fits in with our values and reject the rest. Similarly with selling, I said that it fits in with our value that someone else should do the selling and ask for money, not me. So net, coming back to your question, even for the business, as the business grows, for a new business, definitely it's important to ask your customers, do this survey and find out, then answer those questions. For a growing business, also it is important because very often we need to pivot. So I always say pivot or perish. Very few people get PMF and the entire business alignment right at the first go. I mean, that either you get in touch with the market realities and start charging, or else you perish. So it's pivot or perish. And I'll give you an example, which is my favorite, that I started this as an impact community just like Sindhu because I wanted to do good in the world. But to be sustainable, we have to pivot. So I pivoted to B2C and started charging for the membership. Again, I felt that we were not able to acquire at the scale which was required to sustain, and therefore again pivot. Now it's still a B2C community, but the maximum revenue comes from B2B programs, corporate programs, and I have 10 trainers and coaches, and we all work together in order to deliver those programs. That's where the revenue comes from, and that subsidizes the B2C part, because often individuals cannot afford the kind of coaching charges which corporates pay for, and therefore now we have a good mix of this. So it's pivot, and when you need to pivot, you again need to go back to the drawing board and ask these questions and ask your customers what is it that they want. So at every stage in the business, whether it's growth or initial, I do feel that these three questions are relevant in order to stay on course. There was a time when people said you're too much in a niche. You need to operate, in a wider market, open it up to men. And that's when I went back to my purpose. I was tempted to. That would give me more revenue. Even organizations were telling me, why don't you do programs for the men in our team? Why are you so stuck on women? And then I went back to the purpose. What was the why? The why was to help women to sell confidently. I'm not saying I'm against men, but there are enough men in selling. The idea was to create more women sales leaders, more confident sellers who were founders and startup owners, who were confident and convinced about their product. And that's why I went back to my why and I decided, no, I'm not going to stray from course. I'm going to remain on course. So these three questions will remain relevant, Radhika, to answer your question. They appear easy, but they are not. Especially your unique value proposition, when you put it down on paper, is quite tough. Yeah, so the simplest form of a unique value proposition is I help X to do Y by doing Z. I help X, which is your target audience or your ICP, to do Y. What do you help them to achieve? By doing Z. And this is the simplest form, but it does not have social proof. Now, to add social proof, you have to mention your awards, recognition, certifications, patent, like I mentioned about that person, or your number of years of experience, or any certifications which you have, or the number of happy customers you have, ratings, reviews. We've been consistently rated amongst the top companies in the world for XYZ. So I help X to do Y by doing Z, endorsed by this. So this is the simplest form, which is who you help, how you help, what outcome you produce, and social proof. And the last should be a CTA. That is, after listening to this, what should the person do? They should sign up for something, they should book an appointment, they should go to your website and do something, fill up a contact form, or you will give them an offer and you book a demo immediately. What is it? So the next CTA has to be clear to them. So this is the simplest form. Any of you can try. I help X to do Y by doing Z, add social proof, add a CTA. And this is iterative. And usually it's very difficult for people to articulate value in 30 seconds. And that's how much time most people take to evaluate you. And if you can't do that, they kind of give up and lose interest in you. And say in a networking event, say in an investor pitch, the first few things you say, especially the 30 seconds, are what is more important. And we need to have the ability to translate features into human outcomes, which are relevant for your target audience. So whether it's your script, collateral, website, it has to have versions of the same statement. Longer versions or shorter, or your personal meeting, whatever, or your video, or everything flows from this. You can try.
Okay. So I think my 3Ws are I help students to use AI by making them AI literate. When I say AI literate, that does not mean how to build with AI or machine learning, but more about the safe zone of basically AI. So AI literacy, as per the UNESCO, is actually understanding what it can do to you and how do you
not having the time to explain all this. How will you say it in your I help X to do Y by doing Z without launching into explanations? Yes. So that sentence has to tell everything, and it cannot be more than, usually the best practice is not more than 200 words, not more than 30 or 60 seconds. That's what is an elevator intro, and that's what is your unique value proposition also. If you're able to do that, then it means that you can explain in the simplest possible way what you do and what value you deliver. So you'll have to try this again. So anybody else can try. And like, for example, I'll give you an example. If you were a website developer, you would say that designer, you would say, I help small business owners to get more qualified leads by creating attractive and affordable websites. Now, there is no proof here, right? Why should I believe? So then you add one more thing, endorsed by more than 500 happy customers worldwide. Now this gives a sense of credibility. I have customers all over the world, 500 customers, or rated 5 by more than 500. So this gives a sense of proof and credibility. Now if I have numbers to prove this, that gives more solid evidence. So I help small business owners to increase their qualified leads by 20% by creating attractive and affordable websites endorsed by more than 500 happy customers. So here, of course, I should have proof of that 20%, that I am able to increase the qualified leads. If I don't, then I have to resort to English. There is no choice. I have to use English there. But some kind of social proof has to be there, expertise, credentials, awards, recognitions, in order for people to believe you. That's why people keep writing that tick, tick, tick on the websites. 2,500 plus workshops, 80 plus corporates. All this is proof that I'm valued by the best organizations worldwide. And that's why we mention the names also, HLL, this, that, whatever, Kotak, so that people are impressed. Anyone else wants to try?
I can try.
Yeah.
So I make perfumes for India, which has brought iconic ingredients to the world, but has never told the narrative of making the scent. I've been trained in Grasse Institute of Perfumery in south of France, and that's where I've learned from the master perfumers, and the products that I've brought to India have been nominated by Elle awards.
I help. Who do you help?
So my product is a direct to consumer product. These are perfumes. So
Yes, I understand. So I am just saying India is too broad. See, the narrower your niche or the
okay,
sharper
so the
your
people who have an evolved taste for scents, will that be generic too?
Yes, very generic. So the sharper your ICP, the sharper your messaging. So, like for example, she said mid-career professionals, women, right? So she's very
Mm-hmm.
clear. If you want to make it clearer, in the age group of 35 to 40, struggling with lack of clarity in their career goals. So I help mid-career professionals in the age group of 35 to 40, struggling with uh, career direction or clarity, to whatever she helps to find direction through my advanced mentorship or coaching methodologies endorsed by XYZ or award winning. For example, if you see, I don't want to tell you that I've got awards, but I'm saying you will see in my LinkedIn profile it says award winning sales mentor. So, and I can write multiple also, but I thought that was like a bit much. So, so that's it. Basically, you should be able to
Okay.
prove valuable, substantiated, differentiated, but people should know who you're talking to. In the previous example, I said I help small business owners. She said I help students. Swati Garg, I help students. So we are pretty clear. And when somebody reads that message, they are clear it's for me or it's not for me. So they either accept, read, or reject. Now, if she says I
Okay.
help students, it's not for me. I know. But I might give it to my daughter or someone else, who is a student.
Hmm.
So it's clear I help students. Of course, it needs more refining and it has to be not more than two sentences, 30 to 60 seconds. So you can say I help who? To do what? By using your perfume, what happens?
Okay.
Right? To feel what? To experience what?
Actually, perfume is not for helping people. That's what I was
You don't
thinking.
help,
It's more
but then how do you make
of
them
an.
feel? See, there are products which clearly solve problems or challenges, but there is also
Hmm.
something called aspirational products which you aspire to
Right.
have, where most of the luxury products are placed, and perfume comes there only. In India, it's a luxury, right? Most the
Yeah.
masses cannot afford it. So there are also aspirational products. So a seller at the basic level or a basic seller sells a product based on the functional attributes and appeals to the customer's logical sense by talking about features, benefits, and all that. But if you want to move higher in the seller's curve, you need to appeal to their emotional drivers or their aspirational drivers. Functional drivers are the easiest. ये फ़ोन अच्छा है, ये ब्लैक है, इसका इतना ये है, मेमोरी है, इसका clarity अच्छा है, etc., whatever. That is the easiest way, which is at the functional level. But at an aspirational and emotional level, when you are able to sell, that is what differentiates you as a seller. So if you are saying
Okay,
it's
so
one of its kind phone and it is only exclusive phone in which you get XYZ, then you're creating an aspirational feeling in the customer's mind. And if you say that, this is the first phone I bought for my mother on Mother's Day because it had XYZ, you're creating this emotional kind of connect by saying that this is the phone I gifted to my mother because of the fact that it has XYZ features in it, which would help her to achieve this. She was always trying to organize her photos. This has got an inbuilt organizer. I'm just saying, all these things, whatever it is. But whatever it is, emotional, aspirational, functional. But most of us get stuck at the functional level. We need to move on to emotional and aspirational. Your product is clearly aspirational.
help men and women from the age of 25 to 40 years of age, urban living, evolve fashion taste to tune into their own frequency and not just think about smelling good. Something like that. I don't
Yes,
know.
you're getting better. Instead of men and women, you can say individuals so that it's shorter. The idea is to be as concise and brief as possible, but get your message across. Also, to find their frequency, people won't understand what it means. So you
So
have
it
to,
is has to be very simple.
it has to
It's
be extremely, it has to be idiot proof. And
okay.
so
Zero
again, you go back.
cognitive load.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Because there's too much of distraction, too much of overstimulation. I really don't have time, right? So,
Yeah.
so I'm just inundated. And secondly, there is nothing which is different. How are you different from all the 100 other perfumes in the market? I don't know. How can you
Yeah,
just be of
that's the
value to me? Yeah, so that is what you need to think. So it appears very, very simple. But this unique value proposition is a topic which we can talk about for 2 hours. And even 2 hours is not enough, it is an iterative process. So it takes a long time and a lot of discussion with your colleagues, friends, your target
I know we
customer.
are doing it from last 6 months, the whole process of
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to our
absolutely. So
customers, and
it's tough,
we've
yeah.
not zeroed down on one statement yet, but we know
Yeah.
we have their insights. So yeah, it's a very long
Yes.
process. Yes.
It is an iterative process. Absolutely. So you're on the right track. Just need a little more work in order to frame it in terms which are relevant, valuable, and possible to be substantiated.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
So basically, you've told us about how do you decide and reach out to your customer. Second piece, which most people struggle when they're entrepreneurs, and you've mentioned about it, is pricing. How do you decide at what price to sell? Should you decide based on what your competition is selling at for a similar product? Should you decide based on the cost price that it was, it costed you? Should you decide based on whatever anybody is ready to give you? So how do you go? What do you recommend people on thinking about pricing?
So there are various pricing models available, right? In theory, they all sound good, including what you mentioned, cost plus pricing, which is the most popular form, I would say. Then there is loss leader, where you try to undercut everybody else in the market just to get market share. So it all depends again on your why, and it also depends on your objectives immediately. A lot of people want to capture leader share at any cost. In that case, then they would probably offer it at a lower cost. But I would say, since all of us are entrepreneurs and here to make a profit, we need to do a combination of all these. Check what is the market willing to pay, check what is your competition paying, and also what they are offering. Because if you're offering more, then you can charge more. So, but checking the market landscape, competitive landscape, and also checking with your customers, giving them a range that for this kind of services and features, etc., would you be willing to pay from this to this, from this to this, from this to this? When they take a range, that is what is acceptable. So when you survey 50, 100, 200 customers, you get a sense of what your product should be charging. And always give the customer a range, and the lower end of the range should be the minimum possible amount you can accept. It's better than giving a flat number which the customer can accept or refuse. A range makes it look safer for the customer also, and makes them feel they have a choice, because no one likes to be out of control in a sales conversation. The minute you give them the freedom or the liberty to say no, to have a choice, they tend to be more favorably disposed. Which is why if you see that the best example of pricing is McDonald's, right? They have a very low entry level, then they have this plus this, and then they have offers. And so the customer feels that they have a choice, and at any price point they can enter. So we of course cannot do that with all the products, but giving them A, B, C, where B is, if you give them three options, they are most likely to take the middle option, because it appears to, and the difference between the middle and the higher end option should be very low. So, for example, even in McDonald's, you get the entry level thing for $2, and then you get something for $4, and then you have that is which is a Coke plus fries, and then you get something else which is really highly priced. But you are getting so much of value in the middle level that you automatically would go for that. And you think, okay, by playing incremental $1 or $2, I'm getting nearly double or more than that, more than the benefit. So you would end up doing going for that. So that's how I would say price your product, put in a range. Secondly, offer something which is at the lower end of the spectrum, which is just like the basic version of your product, which if the customer takes, they are not going to be able to fulfill all the requirements. The second version should be completely packed. And the third version should be a value plus packed, but the difference should not be too much. So they will most likely go in here.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, this brings us to the last piece of it. So, any tips and tricks for the people who are starting their business?
Selling is not tricking or manipulating. Selling is being ethical, being true to your purpose, which is serving others, helping them achieve their outcomes and their aspirations. And even though there are products which are not solving a problem or a challenge, like we already discussed, there is still something your product is helping the customer to achieve or feel, right? I feel more beautiful when I use a perfume. I feel more confident. I feel more sophisticated. I feel glamorous. I feel I can walk into a room and people will say, wow, she really looks good, smells good. Every time she walks in, I just love meeting her. She's like so well put together. And the perfume is a very big part of that. And that is what I was saying, the emotional and aspirational. When you connect with people's aspirations, you're able to sell. And when you help them achieve their aspirations, you can achieve yours. So Zig Ziglar says you can get anything in life that you want as long as you are helping others get what they want. So if you're helping others get what they want, you can get what you want in sales, because by transforming their lives and helping them to achieve their aspirations, you're transforming your life.
Yeah.
So it all starts with it all starts with your mindset towards selling. And the mindset should not be to close the deal at any cost, to make the customer buy. This make itself sounds forced, but it should be that you collaboratively influence the customer to buy. You show them the impact or how it can improve their lives, how it can change their reality, and inspire them to buy. And that's why I call salespeople as inspirers, because they are supposed to inspire people to buy. Even motivation is like pushing somebody, but inspiring is getting them to a point where they themselves want to buy and they feel it is their idea to buy. And so you need to be so inspirational as a seller that you show them that this is the impact and this is how your life could change. And without this is how your life would look. And show them a very sad life without it. That without this is what will happen. And if you don't buy this is what you stand to lose. And if you show them what they're going to lose, sometimes it's a more powerful motivator than what they stand to gain. Because fear of loss is a more powerful motivator than desire for gain. And that's how insurance sells. Fear of loss versus desire for gain. That's how dentists, doctors, many of them sell. I'm not saying they're being manipulative. They're just showing you what could happen if you don't do something. So when you're not able to convince your customer by what could happen if you do, convince them by showing them what will happen if they don't. Fear of loss. What do they stand to lose, which is called cost of inaction. If you don't act today, this is what people talk about ROI, this is COI, which is my favorite. COI. So tips and tricks, I wouldn't say there is anything except be authentic, be ethical, seek to serve rather than to just close, seek to inspire people, show them how you can change and transform their lives with your product or your solution, and show them how you can help them achieve what they want. Your attitude determines your altitude. That's what, again, Zig Ziglar says. He's one of my favorites. So when your attitude towards selling determines the energy with which you enter the sales conversation. And people read energy and catch your emotions, right? So when you see a movie, when somebody is laughing on the screen, you also laugh. When somebody's showing a fearful scene is happening, you also get scared. People catch your emotions. And the minute you are an authentic seller, they will catch your happy emotions, and they will see that you are confident and happy about selling, and that's the energy they will catch, and your conversation will obviously proceed smoother than it will if you are defensive about your product, and if you are nervous, and if you are only interested in closing the sale. That also they can catch. So negative or positive energy, both they can catch. I would say move in with positive energy and positive intent, that you are here to help and they are here to buy. We sometimes move in with negative intent. Arey yaar, ye log sab aise hi hain. They are not going to buy, or they are just negotiating. They will go to somebody else. Positive intent and positive energy, that I would say is the biggest transformer for any salesperson.
Wonderful.
You can think about how a specific scent is different. Very nice. How you make your customers feel special. I like it that people are thinking in different ways, and it's opening up your mind to a lot of new things. That's what is the idea of an AMA or a workshop, that you open up your mind to new possibilities and new ways of doing and selling the same product or solution to your customer. But yeah, diligence is a quality a lot of us need to have, and we need to be at it. So entrepreneurship is a long marathon and sometimes lonely, and I'm glad that you have communities like this where we can support each other, encourage, learn from each other, and share what we know, because it's a long lonely journey. And we need spaces like this where we talk about things which trouble us, which we are not able to talk about outside. So I'm glad that we could meet, and
Like everybody else, I'm not actually an entrepreneur right now. So I'm currently a job seeker, and like attending this session, it gave me a different and I mean, like a kind of a unique perspective, like how to project myself when I
absolutely.
go in for the interviews. So yeah, I think this is something that I will keep in my mind every time when I think about how do I go for an interview? What am I going to present there? So, like, I always had a kind of standard statement, like, I worked for this company, I did this, I did that. So, that was the kind of what I usually have. But I think with this session, how I need to present myself, I think I just got the importance of that a lot.
That's good.
Bring into
When you
me.
find your job, you're going to treat us. When you find your new job, you're going to treat us. And you're also share your new personal value statement.
As you rightly said, it brings out some of the questions in our head that we've not ever thought about, right? So it's a new area to explore, and it demystifies the whole sales piece of it, which is something which is totally foreign to us so far. And no matter whether you are selling yourself or you're selling a product. So
Me, and thank you, Swati, for your very warm hosting. It was a pleasure. And I hope that all of you will take away a lot and implement it in your life.